Welcome back. We start our news bulletin from Indian-occupied Kashmir, where occupation forces have martyred 2 more youths in the Islamabad district. The occupation forces targeted the civilians during a coordinated search operation in Waghama area of the district. The operation is still underway in the area. Yesterday, the Indian forces killed 3 Kashmiri youths in the Runipora area district. Indian atrocities in the occupied valley have sharply increased despite the COVID-19 outbreak. The valley has been under New Delhi's crushing curfew and communications blackout for the past 331 days. Moving on, Brazil has reported 692 deaths from COVID-19 in the past 24 hours, raising the toll to over 58,000. The US has recorded more than 40,000 cases overnight for the 4th time in the past 5 days, as the country risks becoming the virus epicenter again. The global number of deaths from the virus has crossed 504,000, with infections around 10.3 million. Further details in this report.
The coronavirus pandemic is accelerating every day, with new record cases being reported in almost every part of the world. States in the US are pausing reopening plans amid a surge in coronavirus cases and hospitalizations. Los Angeles County says it is becoming the new COVID-19 hotspot within the US, despite curbs on nightlife. Arizona Governor Doug Ducey has ordered the closure of hospitality sector.
Today's executive order will pause the operation of bars, gyms, movie theaters, water parks, and tubing, effective at 8 p.m. today, with a targeted reopening date in 30 days.
The European Union has named 14 countries whose citizens are deemed safe to be let in from July 1st, despite the pandemic. Those named include Australia, Canada, Japan, Morocco, South Korea, but excludes the US, Brazil, and China. Nigeria and Senegal have also eased some restrictions that were imposed to stem the spread of the coronavirus, while the state of South Australia has cancelled plans to reopen its border to interstate travelers from neighboring Victoria after a spike in infections there. The World Health Organization warns the pandemic is not even close to being over.
We all want this to be over. We all want to get on with our lives. But the hard reality is, this is not even close to being over. Although many countries have made some progress, globally, the pandemic is actually speeding up.
Elsewhere, China has reported 19 new cases of coronavirus compared with 12 the day before. 7 of the new cases are in Beijing, where a mass testing campaign is underway after an outbreak began in the capital's main wholesale food market.
Meanwhile, Pakistan's COVID-19 death toll has crossed 4,300, with 118 more fatalities in the past 24 hours. The Health Ministry said over 2,800 cases were reported overnight, bringing the total to over 209,000. It said so far over 98,500 people have recovered, while nearly 2,700 remain critical. The ministry said about 107,000 cases are active in the country. It said the province of Punjab reported most overnight infections with 1,727 cases. The Sindh province reported over 1,300 infections, while the capital Islamabad registered 128 infections. In Yemen, 16 Houthi rebels and 2 soldiers have been killed in clashes in Marib and Al-Hudaydah provinces. In a statement, the military said the rebels attacked Hayes district south of Al-Hudaydah. The military said it killed 9 rebels and wounded several others in Al-Hudaydah. It said another clash broke out between the rebels and government troops in Hashia district of Marib province. 7 militants and 2 soldiers were killed in the hours-long clash in Marib. Yemen has been entangled in violence and chaos since 2014 after Houthis overran much of the country, including the capital, Sana'a. Nigeria says it has killed scores of Boko Haram militants in multiple airstrikes in the country's northeastern state of Borno. In a statement, the military said the operation followed days of aerial surveillance missions in Varshel settlement. It said the missions conducted by 2 military jets found the group was using the settlement to launch attacks. The statement said the military also destroyed several structures in the camps of Boko Haram. Since 2009, Boko Haram has been targeting northeastern Nigeria, extending its attacks to countries in the Lake Chad basin. French President Emmanuel Macron has condemned the role of Turkey and Russia in the Libyan conflict. Speaking along with German Chancellor Angela Merkel in Berlin, Macron accused Turkey of criminal intervention. French President said Turkey has increased its military presence in Libya and imported fighters from Syria. He said this was after foreign powers agreed earlier this year to respect a UN arms embargo on Libya. Macron also lambasted Russian President Vladimir Putin's ambivalence towards his country's mercenaries operating in Libya. His statement comes after Libya's National Oil Corporation revealed the mercenaries entered Sahara oil field last week. A Turkish court is set to rule on Thursday whether Istanbul's 6th century iconic Hagia Sophia may be converted to a mosque. President Tayyip Erdogan's pledge to turn the UNESCO World Heritage Site into a mosque has triggered criticism from the EU.
Hagia Sophia was the foremost cathedral in Christendom for 900 years before becoming one of Islam's greatest mosques under Ottoman Empire. It was turned into a museum in 1935 by Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, founder of modern Turkey. The Roman Emperor Constantine made the ancient site the capital of his empire in 330 AD and became known as Constantinople. When Ottoman Sultan Mehmed conquered Constantinople in 1453, his first destination was Hagia Sophia. In front of the then the largest church in the world, he knelt, sprinkled soil on his turban and recited the Muslim prayer of faith, turning the church into a mosque.
Now, the Taliban and the US have virtually discussed the implementation of Doha deal and start of intra-Afghan talks. The group spokesman Sohail Shaheen said their leader Mullah Baradar Khan also discussed the withdrawal of US troops with Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Shaheen quoted Baradar saying the delay in the release of Taliban prisoners has lingered on the intra-Afghan talks. Baradar assured Pompeo that Afghan soil will not be used against the security of the United States and other countries. He also called on the US to release Haji Bashar and the remaining Afghan detainees at Guantanamo Bay. Earlier, Baradar, along with his delegation, met Iranian Special Representative for Afghanistan to discuss refugees and border issues. Meanwhile, the Taliban have released 20 Afghan soldiers and police officers in Kunduz province under the Doha peace deal. The U.S. envoy in Lebanon says the page has been turned over a court ruling banning local media from interviewing her. A Lebanese judge issued the ruling on Saturday after envoy Dorothy Shia criticized Iran-backed Hezbollah group. Lebanon's Foreign Minister Nassif Hitti had summoned Shia to the ministry on Monday. Talking to media afterwards, Shia said it is crucial to focus on the real issue of the economic crisis in Lebanon, while Hitti emphasized the importance of media freedom and the right to free expression. Lebanon is grappling with an acute economic crisis seen as the worst threat to its stability since the 15-year-long civil war. Venezuela has ordered the EU envoy to leave the country hours after Brazil sanctioned 11 Caracas administration officials. In a televised address, President Nicolas Maduro gave EU's diplomat Isabel Berrante Pedrosa 72 hours to leave the country. Maduro also lashed out against Spain's ambassador to Caracas, Jesus Silva. Maduro accused him of participating in the failed April 2019 bid to overthrow him, led by Leopoldo Lopez, and the botched raid in May.
Venezuela reserves diplomatic actions against the Spanish ambassador in Venezuela for his participation in the armed incursion of Mesutto and his complicity with criminal acts that the Wall Street Journal denounced by Mr. Leopoldo Lopez. Expect news in the next few hours.
Food security has lately risen to the top of the national agenda in Cuba, with countless news headlines dedicated to the topic. So the government has called on citizens to grow more of their own food. Let's find out more in this report.
Cuba imports roughly 2/3 of the food it consumes at a cost of around $2 billion annually. But the imports have nosedived in recent years as aid from ally Venezuela shrank following its economic implosion and U.S. embargo. The communist government has called for citizens to grow food in whatever spaces they can find, from backyards to balconies.
I think it's great, but this can't happen only when we have a crisis. It has to be a way of life. Because then when we come out of the crisis, we return to consumerism, to depending on that chain. I think it's great, but it should be promoted, not just in time of crisis, but as a healthy, independent lifestyle.
The coronavirus pandemic, which has paralyzed the key tourism sector, has only exacerbated the situation.
When I saw the situation of the pandemic here in the country, I decided to use a part of our land to plant. The only thing I feel is that the idea came to me a little late. But since we are not doing anything in the temple, I'm going to do a short cycle of 6 months maximum. And I planted yucca, corn, chives, garlic, and leek.
Some Cuba observers are cautiously hopeful the crisis will push the government to reform its agricultural model, which, like the rest of the economy, remains heavily centralized.
Colombia has seized 1.2 tons of cocaine at its northern port of Cartagena. Defense Minister Carlos Holmes Trujillo said the drugs worth nearly $73 million were bound for Europe. Trujillo said the bust showed the government was making progress in disrupting the drug business. The authorities said the shipment was hidden in a container headed for Germany. Officials said intelligence work into a drug trafficking organization involved in drug trade deal led to the seizure. We are now taking a short break, but stay tuned for more news. Welcome back. The UN Security Council has unanimously voted to extend the mandate of its 7-year peacekeeping forces in Mali for another 12 months. The renewal of the mission allows the number of its members to continue to comprise up to nearly 13,300 soldiers and over 1,900 police officers. It also commits to presenting a possible exit strategy for the mission by March 2021. Despite the presence of thousands of UN troops, the violence has engulfed the center of the country and spread to neighboring Burkina Faso and Niger. The UN said the attacks have grown 5-fold in the last 4 years, with 4,000 people killed in 2019, up from about 770 in 2016. India has banned 59 mostly Chinese mobile applications, including TikTok, UC browser and WeChat, citing security concerns. In a statement, Ministry of Information said these apps are prejudicial to the security of the state and public order. The ministry said the move will safeguard the interest of millions of Indian mobile and internet users. The ban follows a border clash between the two nuclear-armed nations earlier this month. At least 20 Indian soldiers were killed and dozens of others wounded in the conflict. Both countries are set to hold a third round of military-level talks today. In China, scientists have discovered a new strain of swine flu which is capable of triggering a pandemic. This was revealed in a study published in the US science journal PNAS. The study said the virus strain possesses all the essential hallmarks of being highly adapted to infect humans. Researchers said the virus can mutate further, which can then spread easily from person to person. The new virus is named G4 and is genetically descended from the H1N1 strain that caused a pandemic in 2009. The International Atomic Energy Agency says a slight increase in radiation in air above northern Europe poses no threat to people's health and the environment. In a statement, the agency said 33 countries informed the organization that no release of nuclear isotopes had taken place on their territory. It said IAEA will continue its efforts to analyze collected information in order to identify the possible origin and location of the release. The agency said the levels reported to the IAEA are very low and pose no risk to human health and the environment. Meanwhile, the Kremlin said Russian system of radiation safety monitoring also detected no threatening situation in the country's northwest. Scientists say the South Pole has been warming at more than 3 times the global average over the past 30 years. In a new study, they say this could have huge implications for the melting of Antarctic ice sheets, marine life, and the rising of global sea levels. More in this report.
The South Pole, the most isolated and coldest part of the planet, is also one of the most rapidly warming ones. According to the study, the pole warmed by about 0.6 degrees Celsius per decade over the past 3 decades. The global average over that time was about 0.2 degrees Celsius per decade. The warming is partly connected to naturally rising temperatures in the tropical Western Pacific. Researchers say the rest is due to human-induced climate change. Still, the South Pole is not yet in any danger of melting, as the year-round average temperature is still about -50 degrees Celsius. But the finding shows that no place is unaffected by change on a warming planet.
Boeing has begun a test flight to determine the safety of revamped 737 MAX after crashes grounded the jet worldwide last year. The flight took off from an airfield near Seattle and flew through eastern Washington state before dipping down into Oregon and eventually returning back. U.S. Federal Aviation Administration said it will evaluate Boeing's proposed changes to the automated flight control system. It said analysis flight maneuvers and emergency procedures to assess whether the changes meet FAA certification standards. Deliveries to airlines were frozen after jet safety ban in March 2019, following 2 crashes that killed 346 people. Stock markets in Asia are trading higher as investor sentiments jumped after China's manufacturing purchasing managers index for June came in above expectations. Stocks are witnessing fresh rally as investors continue to pin hopes over revival of economic activity. Nikkei 225 is trading nearly 1.5% higher, recovering yesterday's losses. Seoul's Kospi index has gained over 1%. Shanghai Composite is trading over 0.5% higher. Hong Kong's Hang Seng index is trading flat. Meanwhile, international benchmark Brent crude oil price has gained over 1.5%. Now let's look at the weather from around the globe. This is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.